Okay, so I don't normally do videos like this. I normally prefer to do more of a kind of planned, comprehensive review, but I just bought a new item and I thought I'd do more of a kind of first impressions video. Okay, so let's get this open. What the heck? A lot of packaging, a lot of packaging. We have the new DJI RS5 gimbal. I haven't bought a gimbal for something like 6 or 7 years now, so I thought it was high time I actually got a replacement. My original Ronin SC is starting to get a little bit worse for wear. It still works, but it doesn't really work with my setup anymore. So yeah, I thought it was time to get one of these bad boys. Okay, so I'm actually jumping forward to the next day now. I've decided to refilm this section again, even though I did film an unboxing and a first impressions video. I will use some of the footage from that, but it didn't really go to plan. A lot of that is down to the fact that I'm actually not that familiar with the more recent DJI products. I haven't bought a new gimbal for years, and I've tried them occasionally, but I've never really been familiar with the menu system, at least the more recent one, or the app. And I'll be completely honest, I didn't really look at the product listing that close before I bought it. I think that's everything. The only thing I can't see is the focus motor. Maybe it doesn't include the focus motor. Oh, interesting. I'm just going to double check the listing there. I don't think it does. Oh, that's really disappointing. So yeah, that's not actually the case. And I was quite disappointed when I realized, because I really wanted to use the RS5 with my vintage SLR lenses and my anamorphic lens as well. All the previous combo kits did actually come with a focus motor, so I just assumed this would too. And when I realized it didn't, I did honestly think I'd made a mistake in buying this. However, instead of the focus motor, it comes with the tracking module. Now, initially I wasn't that fussed about this, but actually having tried it out a bit, I think it may be a lot more useful than I first thought. So it comes in this semi-hard zip case. I have already opened it, it is already set up, but for the sake of illustration, I'm just gonna show you what's actually in it. Inside is the main gimbal. I have already attached the base plate. You've got the battery grip, which still looks very similar to the original SC, but the way it attaches is a bit different. You've got a much improved tripod, which I really like. The legs actually come out in unison. I don't think they did for the last one, correct me if I'm wrong, but compared to my other one, which is this SC here, this had floppy leg syndrome like mad, so the update on it is certainly welcome. You've also got the briefcase handle, which now comes with an electronic control element, and of course this is the tracking module, which just sits on the top here and kind of magnetically clips in place. Aside from that, you've also got a quick release plate, USB cables, some literature, some lens support, some 1/4 20-inch screws, and that's about it. But yes, this is the main kind of meat of what's in the case. As I just said, the tripod is a lot better than the kind of prone to floppiness one that you got on the SC, and I just much prefer it. This is so much better. It's got a little kind of gear in there which keeps them all in unison, and I'm pretty confident this will hold itself better than that one did. As far as the battery grip goes, I believe it's pretty much the same design as the previous generation, just with a slightly higher capacity. It looks and feels quite similar to the SC version that I've got here, but the way it attaches is quite different. So this unlocks at the side here and comes off like that, whereas this one, you actually have to loosen this bit and it comes off like that. And I did find sometimes that it would come off in my bag, and I have nearly lost it on a few occasions. So yeah, definitely an improvement on the battery grip design. In terms of actual physical differences, they're very similar in size. I actually just assumed this was going to be a lot bigger than the SC, but actually that's not the case. At least in terms of height, it's about the same. This section here is actually a little bit smaller than this section, but the one thing that is different is this section here with the motors. This is significantly bigger and can take a much higher payload than what this could take. Certainly my setup with the 24-70 on the S1 II in a cage will not balance on this. I have tried, and you'd need a ton of counterweights, and I think if I did, it would just end up coming really close to the maximum capacity, and I don't think you get the full functionality. Whereas I can say already on this one, it balances absolutely fine. As I said before, there's a little magnetic port for the tracking module. I think it's the same as what was in the RS4 and RS4 Pro, but either way, it's a lot nicer than having to use cables or the old method where I think you had to stick your phone on top of your camera and then it would kind of try and synchronize, and balancing that was ridiculous because I believe it did have it in this, But yeah, the foam method was not so good, whereas this is a lot sleeker. So looking around the back, obviously you've got the LCD screen, which I think has been a mainstay since the 3rd generation. But for me, coming from the original SC, this is quite a nice upgrade. On this one, I had to do a lot of the kind of options and settings in the app, whereas in this, I can do a lot of it actually on the gimbal, which is really nice. If I'm completely honest, it did take me a little while to get familiar with all the controls, and that's why I got a bit frustrated yesterday. Right? Goodness me, there's so many things to check here. How do you check the balance of it? How do you cancel it? This is gonna drive me nuts. It took me ages just to kind of familiarize myself, and again, finding the manual, you have to do it online, and that's kind of annoying. But once I figured it out, I realized actually it's quite intuitive. All the kind of important settings are quite easy to access. My favorite being the fact that you can now just calibrate the gimbal by pressing a button. Equally, you can also check the balance of it by just pressing a button. There's no more going into the app, holding it like this and letting it kind of slowly figure out its balance. So yeah, overall, it's a lot nicer experience than using the old SC. One feature that I think is new to the RS5 is the Z-axis monitor. So it tells you if you're kind of bobbing around too much and need to improve your ninja walk. Obviously, this doesn't actually stabilize Z-axis, but being able to monitor it and improve your walk, that's quite good, and I think I will use that. So one thing that I think I am missing on the SC compared to the RS5 is I did quite like having the focus wheel here, but again, I can see why it's been put on the back here. And also as well, given the fact that I'm not currently going to be doing any kind of manual focusing of cine lenses, I suppose it's not really an issue, and it does free up the NATO ports on the other side, so yeah, I can't really complain, but that's the only thing that I think I can see myself missing a little bit. And that does take me to the kind of last point I have about the focus motor. I did try the old SC one just in case it might connect and might work. I just want to know if it will power the old focus motor. It's flashing at me, it doesn't seem very happy. Surprise, surprise, it doesn't work. It does kind of power up, you get a little flashing red light, but I think the protocol's different, it just won't pair with it. Try calibrating it, nothing works, but again, that's not surprising. I do believe that the current version of the focus motor does work. Obviously that is an extra purchase, which is kind of annoying, but as far as I know, it does work with this, same as the RS4. What I believe probably doesn't work is the LiDAR system. Obviously that does work with the RS4 Pro, and there was a little part of me that was hoping that maybe they'd open it up to the RS5. I think that was probably a little hopeful, a little naive, and although I can't find definitive answers, I think it's safe to say that it doesn't work with the LiDAR system, which is a shame, but yeah, not entirely surprising. And I'll be honest, this is where I maybe started to question my purchase. Maybe I should have got the RS4 Pro, but then actually when I think about it, as much as I want to use my Laser Rumus and my other sort of SLR lenses with the gimbal with autofocus, how often am I actually going to be using those for my typical jobs such as weddings? Probably not that often. At the moment, I'm not really doing sort of bigger productions that require that sort of thing. So actually the RS4 Pro, while it would have been nice, didn't feel like it would have been completely necessary. Obviously it's a lot more expensive compared to this. I think 900 or nearly 1,000 for the combo as opposed to 629 or whatever I paid. And equally, it's quite a bit heavier and bigger and bulkier. And when I'm on a wedding day, I either need something relatively small that I can carry for a long time, or if I'm not using it, something I can carry in my bag quite easily. So as much as the RS4 Pro or even the RS5 Pro, whenever it comes out, would be nice to have, I do think the RS5 meets my needs better at the moment. Okay, let's talk about balancing. Balancing the old SC was fine. You've got these little tightening sections here and you just sort of slide it in place and kind of figure out where your balance is. However, on the RS5, you now have fine control of all axes. I believe the 4 only had control of 1 or 2 of them. This has control of everything. So you've got sort of twisting screws. It is so much easier to balance than the SC ever was. And it was quite easy to get even this thing balanced. Although it wasn't without its challenges, but again, I think that's more of a me problem. So for context, I use the Manfrotto 323 plate system for all my tripods, my light stands, my gimbal, my sliders, anything like that, just for easy sort of quick release and changing things over. Now I had it on here for a long time and I only ever used lightweight cameras, so even though it made it taller, it was still fairly easy to balance. Now I did try to use it on this gimbal, but unfortunately I had to put the quick release plate on, then put this on top of that, and by the time I'd actually put this setup on top of the RS5, on top of this, on top of the quick release plate, it was just too top heavy and it was going to require a bunch of counterweights to make it work. So I was feeling quite disappointed, quite negative about the RS5, and honestly having buyer's remorse, even though actually it was a me problem for insisting on using this kind of setup and making it all top heavy. Before I decided to completely give up on the gimbal, I thought I should at least see if it balances at all. So I used the quick release plate that's included. And then I suddenly realized that it's the same as what's on the bottom of this, which is Arca Swiss. So I realized I can just put it on like so, as is, with a much lower center of gravity, and sure enough, it balances beautifully. And the best part is it can use my sort of standard handheld run and gun setup without me having to de-rig anything, change lenses. I can just literally use this handheld on a wedding day, slap it on the gimbal and keep going, which is what I needed. Now let's talk about the tracking module. This is something I wasn't particularly fussed about. I thought it'd be kind of cool, but I didn't think it'd be any more than just kind of a gimmick. But actually in testing, I've realized that it's gonna have a lot more application than I first thought. So just using it as an operator, obviously being able to track and then, you know, track a subject, track an object, whatever it is, that's gonna potentially be quite useful as long as I can trust it to do what I need it to do. I tested a little bit out in the last couple of days, just inside and out in the garden, and it does seem to lock on to subjects pretty well, like non-moving objects. You do have to have a level of contrast, otherwise it can't see it. So I can't just select an area of the wall next to me. It has to have some kind of thing it can grab onto. But in some of these shots you can see on screen, I was able to lock on fairly well. This was on, I think, the medium setting. So in order to actually access the tracking mode, you need to swipe in from the left. I'll be honest, it took me a little while to figure this out. And again, it's another reason why I got a bit frustrated with it yesterday. But eventually we got there in the end. So if you want to track a subject, let's do it on my laptop there. What you need to do, as you can see it's there, you just need to select the laptop there, frame it how you want on screen. It's locked on. I'm not even doing anything, I'm literally just moving back and forward. And there we go. That's how you do that. So obviously that's using it as a normal operator, tracking a subject, but where I think this is really going to come into its own is if you're a solo shooter and doing stuff for YouTube and you want the camera to follow you as you walk around. I think this is perfect for that. Now again, you used to be able to do that with the old kind of phone system, but actually being able to do it just with this setup is really, really nice. Now, ideally, you also want to have the actual view of the camera, but for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna do it this way. So I'm gonna press on my face. It's now going to be tracking me, and I'm just gonna frame up as best I can. And then if I start recording, if I walk away, it is now following me. Follows me around the room, slightly creepy. And that's basically how you do it. You can either have the subject in the center of the frame, or you can set a framing, you know, have the subject slightly off and the gimbal will remember that framing. In terms of the actual motion, I'd say that the slow setting is the most natural and cinematic, but if you move a bit too fast, it can lose you quite easily. The fast setting, on the other hand, is really sticky and it's quite hard to lose you unless you completely like run in the other direction or something, or run behind the camera, then it will kind of freak out and lose you. But yeah, the fast setting is generally very, very sticky, very responsive, but it does feel quite robotic. That could be good for certain sequences, but actually I'd say somewhere between slow and medium is the most natural and will probably be the best for either subject tracking if you're behind the camera, or tracking yourself if you're in front of the camera. Okay, let's talk about the briefcase handle. If I'm completely honest, at first I really wasn't that fussed about this. I would have preferred the focus motor, but actually having tried it out a bit, I'm starting to realize it could be quite a useful accessory to have. This attaches on the left side of the gimbal where there's an electrical contact, and obviously anyone who's used the previous ones will know this is kind of how you have it. But obviously the difference being you now have controls on the back. This is actually going to be quite useful. If I'm doing sort of low underslung stuff, I can just press my thumb here to start a recording. So again, I think that's going to be quite a useful feature. The other part that I really appreciate, again, having never owned one of these, I know these have been around for a little while now, but having never personally owned one of these, is the cold shoe mount. Previously with my Ronin SC, if I wanted to attach one of these monitors, I had to use this kind of weird arm. There were better ones out there, but this is the one I had, and it screws in on the side here, and then you put the monitor on here. Again, I've actually shown this in the previous video, and it was a fine solution for what I was doing, but the problem is that once this is on, and you've got the battery on, once you've got the camera on, it's quite sort of side heavy, quite lopsided. So it worked, but I'll be honest, I never really like using a monitor on this setup. However, compared to using it with the briefcase handle, all I have to do is use my monitor attachment here, plug it in like so, cable again, monitor on, and there we have it. That is a lot more natural feeling to use. I can obviously adjust the height of this depending on where I'm at. So if I'm looking down, obviously have it like that. And the best part is I can obviously use it more sort of two-handed like this and spread the weight of it a bit. It feels a lot more balanced doing it this way. So yeah, I'm actually really appreciating the briefcase handle a lot more than I thought I was going to. So I've talked a lot about the ergonomics and the features, but how is it to just use as a gimbal? Well, I've only used it obviously for the last 24 hours or so, and really only in my house and in my garden, but so far it just feels like any other decent gimbal. The motors do feel pretty strong, and I'm able to zoom this in all the way without the need of rebalancing. Obviously that is recommended, but in the moment, if I'm just trying to get kind of a zoomed in shot, I'm not noticing this like fighting with me or jittering all that much. If I kind of take it to the extreme, it can kind of freak out a little bit, but compared to the old RSC, if I had anything slightly overbalanced or unbalanced, it would just freak out and like vibrate and get very upset with me basically. Whereas the motors on this are a lot stronger than what was on there. And again, being able to have this all the way zoomed in, it's not too upset with me. That's gonna be really useful on a wedding day. But as long as this gimbal is well balanced and you don't use a camera that's too big, using this feels very similar to using this. The only real difference is how much you can get away with on this one when things aren't totally perfect. And actually, to be honest, it's the same with a lot of gimbals. The technology is pretty mature at this point, and you know, obviously algorithms improve, motors improve, and I'm sure in time I'll probably see like subtle differences just generally in the way that it smooths out footage compared to this one. But again, it's not a technology that's sort of drastically evolving at the moment. I'm keen to see in the future if DJI ever does a Z-axis sort of pro gimbal or super pro gimbal, something that means you don't have to use the Ronin 4D, although I don't know if we'll get that soon or in the long term, but if they ever do, I'd certainly love to try it out. But what I will say is having the Z-axis sort of monitor on the side here is going to help me to get better shots overall, as long as I keep an eye on it. So did I make a mistake buying the RS5 combo? No. If you'd asked me yesterday, I would have said probably yes, then maybe not. And then by the end of the day, I probably would have said no, it's actually pretty cool. And it's true, now that the dust has settled and looking at all the features that we've covered in this video, it does tick more than enough boxes for me to be able to use in weddings and events and even some documentary work. If I go into higher end work, which I'd like to eventually, then yes, I may need to look at the RS4 Pro or RS5 Pro, whatever comes out. But for now, this should serve me pretty damn well. I'll be honest, I'm still a little bit disappointed it didn't come with the focus motor, but I can live with it. Being honest, I'm probably going to end up buying the Focus Pro Creator combo, even if it's only for handheld work. Although I think I might be able to find a way to rig this, even if it's not native. And it might be pretty damn janky, but I do enjoy rigging things, and that would actually make quite an interesting video. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay.
Where's the camera?
It's there.
Oh.
It's my monitor.